Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Based upon the testimony this morning, I'd like to move we extend the terms of these two generals for another 4 years.
Without objection.
Sorry, fellas. The bad news is you get to tell your family. I have to point out, Mr. Chairman, that in the hour that we've been sitting here, investors in the United States stock market have lost $2.5 trillion, and I think that's something that should be noted. General Cavoli, it appears that the Russians and President Putin are engaged in what they consider a kind of waiting game, a grinding down in the conflict in Ukraine. Are the Ukrainians destined to lose?
No, Senator. Thank you for the question, because I think it's an important one. There's nothing inevitable in war. And the Ukrainians are in very strong defensive positions right now and are improving weekly their ability to generate force and to reinforce those positions. It is hard sitting here right now to envision a major Ukrainian offensive that clears everybody, out of every square inch of Ukraine. But likewise, it's very hard to envision Ukraine collapsing and losing that conflict. I do not think there's an inevitability to a Ukrainian loss.
And a follow-up question, and you touched on this in answers to Senator Brown's. Describe the Ukrainians' evolution of their force over the course of this conflict. My sense is they've really gone, as I think you mentioned, Minutemen with a rifle to a really serious modern military force.
Yeah, absolutely, Senator. So in the beginning, they had a certain number of organized brigades in the east. But what really kicked in was sort of volunteers who spontaneously came in, organized under officer leadership. General Syrski north of Kiev was key in stopping that advance toward Hostomel and then back out, pushing the Russians out of Bucha. They evolved from that. They consolidated that into Soviet-style brigades, which they were used to, with Soviet equipment. And then coming through late 22 and 23, we could see that equipment, and especially their artillery ammunition of a Soviet caliber, was gonna be exhausted. And so we had to help them convert to a largely Western-equipped and almost exclusively Western artillery-equipped force, which is pretty complicated. We operate off of a different aiming circle.
They've been effective in making that transition.
It's amazing. To do that under fire, under the pressure of one of the world's largest armies, it's a fantastic feat.
Let me change the subject entirely for a minute. Please discuss Russian and Chinese activities in the Arctic and the risks in the Arctic. It strikes me that this is a looming threat area that we should be addressing. And I should mention the reason it's becoming so important is the melting of the Arctic ice, which has something to do with climate change. 70% of the Arctic ice has disappeared in the last 40 years. So talk to me about the strategic importance of the Arctic.
Absolutely, Senator. So from the U.S. perspective, the most important thing to understand is the shortest distance from Russian airfields to the United States is over the polar cap.
And they are building up those airfields, are they not?
They are. They were before the war at a fast pace. It's slowed down a little bit during the war, but they're still opening airfields and repairing existing ones. The other thing that comes out of the Arctic, sir, the Northern Fleet in Murmansk comes up, sails down through the GI-UK gap and breaks out, or tries to break out into the Atlantic, from which they can hold key U.S. targets at risk with sub-launch cruise missiles, among other weapons.
So we should be paying particular attention to the Arctic as a new domain, if you will, of potential conflict.
And I think we are. The U.S. Northern Command, so General Guillot, has the primary U.S. responsibility for it. But of course, Strategic Command also has activities up there. EUCOM has activities up there because so much of the Arctic is in my AOR. And NATO, of course, almost all of the nations in the Arctic Council are NATO nations. The only one that's not is Russia. So we've recently been sponsoring tabletop exercises to make sure we understand the details of command and control and coordination of operations there.
Thank you. General Langley, I'm out of time, but I'm very concerned about the rise of ISIS in the Sahel. That is a serious issue that we need to attend to, that we're talking about great power competition, China, Russia. We can't forget about terrorism. Is that correct?
Senator, that's correct. And the rise of ISIS by numbers in the Sahel, really more focused on the ISIS element that's in Somalia because of their networks. In the Sahel, they're growing in number, but not so much in capability. But we are still engaged, especially in coastal West Africa, of like-minded countries to deter that from the outside in.
Thank you.
Thank you
Mr.
for
Chairman.
that yes or no question,
Yeah, exactly.
Senator King.